It is January of 1806, and the harbor in Boston is laughing at a 23-year-old man named Frederic Tudor. He has just loaded 130 tons of frozen pond water onto a ship called the Favorite, and he is sending it to the island of Martinique in the middle of the Caribbean in the middle of summer. The local newspapers do not bother hiding their contempt. One editor jokes that Tudor might as well try to ship the Boston winter itself. Investors who once considered backing him now cross the street to avoid the conversation. And when the Favorite finally limps into port weeks later, most of the cargo has turned to seawater and steam, melted into nothing, an expensive puddle in a tropical harbor. Tudor will lose money on this voyage. He will lose money on the next one too. He will be thrown into debtor's prison before this obsession finally pays off. But the story does not start here. It starts almost 3,000 years earlier in the river valleys of ancient China. Long before anyone thought to sell ice as a luxury, people were already fighting to keep it. Chinese texts from the Zhou dynasty, specifically the Book of Songs compiled somewhere around the 10th century BCE, describe workers cutting blocks of ice from frozen rivers in the depth of winter and hauling them into deep earthen pits called ling yin, ice houses, so the emperor's court could have cool wine in July. This was not a convenience. This was a display of power. Only the wealthy, only the connected, only the palace itself could command enough labor to steal winter and smuggle it into summer. Halfway across the ancient world, in Persia, engineers were solving the same problem with even more audacity. Sometime around 400 BCE, Persian architects began building yakhchals, extraordinary cone-shaped structures made of a heat-resistant mortar called saruj, capable of storing ice through blistering desert summers using nothing but shape, shade, and airflow. No electricity, no refrigerant gas, just geometry and a very good understanding of physics. A full 2,000 years before anyone in Europe would think to formalize thermodynamics as a science. The Romans, never a civilization to let a Persian innovation go unstolen, had their own version. Wealthy citizens in the 1st century employed men called Navarii, snow merchants, who hauled compacted snow down from the Apennine Mountains and packed into straw-lined pits beneath the city. The Emperor Nero reportedly favored snow mixed with fruit juice and honey, an ancestor of the modern snow cone, enjoyed by exactly one man on the planet who could afford it. This is worth sitting with for a moment. For nearly all of human history, cold was not a household convenience. Cold was a class marker. If you could keep ice through summer, everyone around you knew exactly how much power you had. Fast forward to Renaissance Italy, specifically Florence in the late 1500s, and you find Francesco I de' Medici obsessing over ice houses on his estates, storing snow in insulated pits so his court could enjoy chilled wine and early forms of gelato. The technology had not fundamentally changed in 2,000 years. It was still pits, still insulation, still labor, still a luxury reserved for people with titles. And this is exactly the world Frederic Tudor was born into in 1783 in a wealthy Boston family, watching the elite of the young United States try, and mostly fail, to recreate European ice house luxury in a country that did not yet have the infrastructure for it. Tudor's insight was deceptively simple, and this is where the first real pivot point of the story happens. This decision seemed small at the time. It was not. Instead of thinking of ice as a static luxury item stored near where it was cut, Tudor decided ice was a commodity that could be shipped, like sugar or timber, to places that had never seen a frozen surface in their lives. The problem was insulation. Ice ships full of melting cargo were a joke, and Tudor knew it after that disastrous 1806 voyage. The breakthrough came slowly, through trial, through bankruptcy, through years in a Boston debtor's prison in 1812 after his early ventures collapsed entirely. Tudor did not give up. He partnered with a man named Nathaniel Wyeth, a farmer and inventor who, in 1825, designed a horse-drawn ice-cutting plow that could carve uniform rectangular blocks out of frozen ponds at a scale no handsaw could match. Uniform blocks meant tighter packing. Tighter packing meant less surface area exposed to air. Less exposed surface meant less melting. Combined with sawdust insulation, a cheap byproduct of a New England lumber industry that Tudor discovered almost by accident, kept blocks frozen for months. The entire equation changed. By the 1830s, Tudor was shipping New England pond ice not just to the Caribbean, but to Calcutta, over 16,000 miles by sea, arriving with as much as 2/3 of the original cargo still solid. Think about that for a second. A block of ice, cut from a frozen pond outside Boston, survived a 4-month journey through the tropics and arrived in British colonial India, still cold enough to matter. The British colonial elite in Calcutta greeted the first shipment in 1833 with actual celebration, crowds gathering at the docks, because ice in India, at that point in history, was functionally a miracle import. Tudor became known as the Ice King. Walden Pond itself, made famous by Henry David Thoreau, was one of the ponds harvested, and Thoreau wrote with a mixture of fascination and unease about 100 Irish laborers cutting 1,000 tons of ice a day off the very pond he'd gone to for solitude. And this is where the story stops being charming. The natural ice industry that Tudor built ran almost entirely on brutal seasonal labor. Ice cutters worked 12-hour days on frozen lakes in temperatures well below freezing, using saws and pikes on ice that could, and did, crack without warning. Drowning was a routine occupational hazard, not a rare tragedy, and record-keeping on these deaths was inconsistent at best because the workers were overwhelmingly poor immigrants whose names rarely made it into any official ledger. By the late 1800s, an even darker problem emerged. As American cities industrialized, rivers like the Hudson, once a major source of harvested ice, became increasingly contaminated with sewage and industrial runoff. Ice cut from polluted water was still sold as pure, and outbreaks of typhoid fever in several East Coast cities in the 1880s and 1890s were traced directly back to contaminated ice supplies. People were, quite literally, getting sick from the very product marketed to keep their food and drink safe. This was not an isolated scandal. It was an open industry secret that persisted because natural ice was cheap, demand was high, and regulation was almost non-existent. The second major pivot point of this story is the moment mechanical refrigeration stopped being a curiosity and started being a threat to Tudor's entire empire. In 1851, a Florida physician named John Gorey patented an ice-making machine, not for cocktails, but because he was treating yellow fever and malaria patients in Apalachicola and believed cooling their rooms would ease their suffering. Gorey's machine worked. It also failed commercially, partly because Tudor's ice lobby, protecting a very profitable natural ice trade, actively worked to discredit mechanical ice as unsafe and unnatural. Gorey died in 1855, largely unrecognized, his invention decades ahead of a market willing to accept it. But the idea did not die with him. In France, engineer Ferdinand Care developed an ammonia absorption refrigeration system by 1859 that worked reliably enough for commercial use. And in Germany, Carl von Linde refined vapor compression refrigeration through the 1870s into a system efficient enough to industrialize. This decision, to trust a machine over a lake, seemed small at the time. It was not. It marked the beginning of the end for an entire industry built on frozen ponds and immigrant labor. By the early 20th century, natural ice harvesting was in visible decline, squeezed by contamination scandals, warmer winters that made harvests unreliable, and mechanical ice plants that could produce clean, consistent ice regardless of the season. The final pivot came into American homes directly. In 1913, the first practical home refrigerator, the Demelra, appeared on the market, though it was General Electric's 1927 monitor top refrigerator that truly brought mechanical cooling into the middle-class American kitchen at scale, selling roughly 1 million units. And tucked inside these new refrigerators was something almost embarrassingly small compared to the empires and inventions that preceded it: the ice cube tray. Early trays were simple metal grids, but by the late 1920s and into the 1930s, designs with flexible metal or later rubber dividers made popping out individual cubes fast, clean, and entirely unremarkable, a piece of everyday plastic and metal that almost nobody today thinks about twice. That is the strange irony sitting at the center of this entire story. Emperors killed for it. Fortunes were built and lost over it. Workers died harvesting it, and it ended up as a rubber tray on a refrigerator door shelf. Which brings us to scale, and the numbers here are genuinely difficult to picture. The global ice industry today, encompassing packaged ice, industrial ice, and ice-making equipment, is valued at well over $60 billion annually. In the United States alone, commercial ice producers manufacture more than 20 million tons of packaged ice every single year, feeding an infrastructure of gas stations, grocery stores, hospitals, and restaurants that most people never think about until a cooler runs dry on a road trip. The average American refrigerator ice maker produces somewhere between 3 and 4 pounds of ice a day, which means a single household appliance, sitting quietly in a kitchen, now generates more ice in a week than most 18th century aristocrats saw in an entire summer. Fast food chains, restaurants, and hospitals depend on ice machines so completely that a broken unit is treated as an operational emergency, not a minor inconvenience. Something that once required Persian engineers, Roman slaves, Chinese laborers, and New England lumberjacks working in brutal winter conditions is now dispensed by pressing a lever on a refrigerator door, and nobody says thank you to it. And here is the twist nobody expects when they start looking into the history of a frozen cube of water. Ice may end up being one of the most strategically important substances in the future of human space exploration. NASA and other space agencies have spent the last 2 decades hunting for water ice in permanently shadowed craters of the lunar South Pole, and missions including India's Chandrayaan-1 in 2008 and subsequent orbital data have confirmed substantial ice deposits are there. That ice is not being considered for drinking or cooling. It is being considered as raw material, something that can be split into hydrogen and oxygen to produce rocket fuel, potentially turning the moon into a refueling station for missions to Mars. The same basic molecule that Frederic Tudor once fought bankruptcy to ship to Calcutta may, within this century, become the fuel source that lets humanity leave the Earth-Moon system entirely. Water ice, ordinary, everywhere, unremarkable water ice, ice might end up being worth more per gallon on the lunar surface than any commodity humans have ever shipped on Earth. So look at where this leaves us. The ice cube became a symbol of aristocratic power, a transoceanic commodity, a public health hazard, a medical intervention, a kitchen appliance afterthought, and quite possibly, eventually, the fuel of interplanetary travel. It has been fought over, died for, smuggled across oceans in sawdust, and dispensed for free at every gas station in America. And no, that is not something anyone made up. It really is a little absurd, when you think about it, that the single most quietly essential item in your freezer once required an emperor's court, a debtor's prison, and a horse-drawn plow to become normal. If you enjoyed this, hit subscribe and drop a comment telling us which part of the ice cube's history surprised you the most. And make sure to like this video so more people can find it.